Microphones, please. That would be great. Thank you. Also, if you're planning on speaking this evening, as members of the public, if you have not signed the paper that's sitting on the table to my left next to our clerk, if you could do so she'll have the correct spelling of your name, we would appreciate it. We want to welcome you to the January 7th, 2020 meeting and budget hearing of the Exeter Region Cooperative School District. If you would please stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance with me. Thank you so much. We'll begin with introductions. We'll begin with Mr. Slifka.
David Slifka, Exeter.
Deb Hobson from East Kingston.
Paul Bauer, Newfields. Travis Thompson, Stratham.
Helen Joy Stratham.
I'm David Ryan, Superintendent.
Molly O'Keefe, Director of Finance and Operations.
Melissa Litchfield, Brentwood.
Bob Hall, Kensington.
Meeting's yours.
Put it on.
Oh, you did? Thank you.
Kimberly Meyer, Exeter.
Administration.
Mike Monahan, Principal of Exeter High School.
Patty Wands, Principal of the Cooperative Middle School.
Sharon Wilson, Principal of SST.
Thank you so much. Before I turn the meeting over to our Finance Director and our Superintendent of Schools, I just wanted to go over some of the protocol for this evening so everybody will understand the process. We are beginning with the hearing. The hearing will be including all of the information relative to the 2021 budget for the coming school year, and we will entertain, after Molly O'Keefe is finished with her presentation, we will entertain questions first from the public. If you would like to ask any questions, you would please go to the microphone, state your name and the town that you are from, and then after that, we will entertain questions from the school board relative to the budget. Once all questions have been answered, we will then call for a recess, about a 10-minute recess, and then proceed with our board meeting. So, having said that, we will turn it over to you, Dr. Ryan, and to Molly. Thank you.
Very much. Appreciate everyone coming out tonight. I know we have some topics to discuss this evening. This budget was relatively difficult to put together, given the increases that we are looking at and moving forward down the next couple of years. We'll be doing our best to keep those increases at the lowest possible number. We're at a crossroads in the state. I've been appointed to the Commission to study school funding, and we meet for the first time on Monday, January 13th, and we'll be looking at what the state is looking to do to call adequate education across the state, but also what they can do to fund adequate education. As you know, we're in a bit of a pickle when we're only looking at property value and property taxes to fund what we do in our schools, and that puts a heck of a burden on our taxpayers. And so what we try to do each year is put together a responsible spending budget that takes your dollars and puts that into classrooms for kids, does the very best that we can to ensure that all of our students, regardless of where they're going after high school, get the very best that they can get and move on to successful lives. So we have about 7 or 8 slides that we would like to go through tonight. I would like to introduce Molly O'Keefe. She's our Director of Finance and Operations. She's brand new this year. She's done a fantastic job. You can imagine putting together 8 budgets, that includes the SAU budget, in a 5-month period is a very difficult job, and she's done very well given the task that's at hand, and the staff that she has been truly outstanding. So Molly, we'd like to have you go through our budget presentation.
Okay. So if you turn to the back.
Make sure your mic's on.
Is your microphone on, Molly?
I think so. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So this is the 5-year history of the cooperative budget. I've gone back to 2016 to show the increase year over year since then. You'll see to the far right, it's our proposed 2021 budget without the bond payment. And the reason I did that is because previous years have not had that bond payment, and we wanted to keep this an apples-to-apples comparison for you. And we'll dive into what makes up that number to the far right as we go through the slides. This is a high-level summary of the fiscal year 20, which we're currently in, to what we're proposing for the fiscal year 21 budget. Fund 10 is your general fund, and Fund 21 is the federal fund, Fund 31 is the capital projects, and Fund 41 is your food service. So all those together make up your total budget. Last year, we had a budget of $78.617 million, and that's due to the CMS bond project. So to raise an appropriate last year, if you were on the ballot, it was $60,342,073. This year, it would be $63,919,213. And I'll dive deeper into these numbers on the next slide. So overall, that equates to a 5.93 increase on the overall budget. However, when you back out the bond payment, it's a 3.34 increase. These are the major changes that are driving that delta. We have changes in general education, administration, and athletics, and that's contractual due to salary in the CBAs. We have had some retirement and position changes. In special education, we have an additional nurse, caseworker, and 5 aides at the middle school, and additional PT and OT time at the high school. We have also seen an increased projection in the special ed transportation and special ed contracted services for the high school at Easter Seals, and an additional RBT and one-on-one nurse at the middle school. For technology, we're looking at a new virtual server. The current Dell warranty expires in June. And for transportation, we have our standard increase for the first student contract, as well as this SST shuttle. It was previously not funded by the grant, but it will be grant funded now. And then the SAU assessment increase was artificially low this year due to the passing of 2 of our fellow colleagues and the plan for their retirement. So going back to business as usual. We've also seen increases due to benefits and the bond payments, and decreased spending in Fed funds, which is the adult ed programs. So at a high level, these are the major changes that are moving the budget from $60,342,073 to $63,919,213. Now looking at the total budget, this is the makeup of it visually. So you can see the largest portion is your general education, and it also highlights the large areas of spending. And then I've also further broken it down into salary and non-salary expense. So as you can see, 72% of our expenditures are salary and benefits. Now, we have talked a lot about position changes. We had a retirement incentive at the cooperative, and 14 people submitted a formal letter of retirement effective 7/1/20. 10 of those positions will be backfilled, and the proposed budget and default budgets reflect a reduction of 7 positions. And I've added on this slide what those 7 positions are. For the default budget basis is the FY20 budget voted in by taxpayers in March of last year, with increases for contractual and mandatory obligations. Increases in utilities, maintenance, technology, and transportation costs, not special education transportation costs, are not allowed to be included by law in the default budget. So right now, we're looking at a difference between a proposed budget and a default budget with a delta of $176,745. And I've also compared the current fiscal year 20 budget to the FY21 default budget to the 21 proposed budget. So this, you'll be able to see at the high-level categories where the numbers are changing in the different budgets. And then for tax impact. So when we talk about tax impact at the cooperative essentially bills the surrounding towns. And so the current year, the assessments to the towns are $47,547,804. With this proposed budget, it would be $51,652,322 collected from the towns. And what that is you start with the operating budget, which we've talked about in the previous slides, and you have to back out the revenue and credits that are received, and the remainder is what is raised in taxes from the surrounding towns. So that's an additional $4,104,518 from the towns. And at the bottom of this slide, you can see the high-level items that make up that delta. And how that impacts the individual towns and the individual households. What I've done on this slide is highlighted how the cooperative budget is appropriated to towns. So per the DOE website, the total operating expenses is 50% on the average daily membership during the second preceding year and 50% on enrollment as of October 1 of the preceding year. And so in the chart below, you can see by town, the 17-18 ADM and the 18-19 ADM. And those values are weighted to get to the individual town's impact. And we obtained the valuations from the town's MS1s to determine the impact per 1,000. And in the far right-hand column, you'll see the change in impact per 1,000 year over year.
Molly, do we happen to have the numbers for excluding the bond? I know this includes what our tax increase is with the bond, broken down per 1,000. I'm just curious, do we happen to have what it is without the bond? I'm just curious, is it 10 cents or 60 cents? You know, I know it varies, but
Yeah, I don't have that right now, but I'd be happy to go back and calculate that.
thank you.
You all set, Molly? Do you have anything else?
Questions?
Dr. Ryan? All right, well, we will open it up to questions. We'll start with the public first. If you have any questions relative to the budget, as I said, if you could go to the microphone over here to my right and state your name and the town that you're from, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Liz Faria, Brentwood. Is that on? I'm pretty loud.
Yes.
So. Do we have this that people can have a copy of? Like, is it on the?
So I've actually asked Kayla tomorrow, our admin assistant, after the meeting, after this became a public document, to post it on the website.
Okay, because that would be a lot easier if people haven't seen the previous large handout tonight. This has a lot more in it, in a condensed form in a way, a lot more understandable. I was at the last one that you had this co-op budget, December 19th, and I want to know what's the big difference between the December 19th one, which was over, well, it's like 6.2% increase, and the today's. So I know one of the things, it looks like you just went by it really fast, but it looked like the GBEX allotment was going from 280 to 140, so that looked like one big change.
That's correct.
But what were the other big changes between the 19th of December and now?
So between the last meeting and now, there was only 2 changes. There was the GBEX change, and then the SST shuttle, we previously did not think would be grant funded, will be grant funded.
So is that reduction now in the
Yes.
fact that that's going to cost us less, is that reflected in the new number?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the public?
My name is Lucy Cushman. I live in Stratham, and my question is on process. I sit on the Budget Advisory Committee, and until the very last meeting, which was held here last month, the subject of GBEX being funded or not funded was not an issue. It wasn't even raised. There were no questions. There were some questions at that hearing. There was no indication from the superintendent that there was any intent of cutting the funding. And then we hear that it's been cut and it's going to be done away with over a 2-year period. That's my understanding anyway. My question is on your process. As a budget committee member, I listened to the teachers, the reading teachers from the middle school, complain about not being aware of what was going on until it had already been decided. And although the Budget Advisory Committee certainly isn't the place for that issue to be discussed or decided, I kept thinking, what did they miss? What meeting were they invited to that they didn't go to and didn't find out about until too late? But as a trustee of GBEX, I have to wonder why you would make a decision to change the funding without even letting them know that they were on the agenda or to be discussed. You didn't give them a chance. And I'm ashamed of you. And I'm saying that, and I think with the right to say that, because I sat where you sat for any number of terms. And if there's one thing I learned, it's that when you make decisions about the public money, and GBEX is a public school, you do it in front of people. You invite the people who are going to be affected to the table. Not that your decision would have been changed, but you do it in a fair and open manner. You did not. And you should all be ashamed of yourselves. And that includes the superintendent.
Would you like to take that one, Dr. Ryan? Would you like to answer that? Or I could, I'd be happy to respond to that, and open to any of my fellow board members. The issue relative to GBEX, first of all, let me preface my remarks by saying that I have always been a supporter of this school. I have supported for the last 7 years, my first 7 years on the school board, the funding for GBEX. The problem that we have dealt with, and this has been going on now for over 2 years, this school board, in addition to the administration at the SAU, has attempted on numerous occasions to meet with the administration at GBEX to explain what our concerns have been relative to funding. It's twofold. It's not just the fact that we've been contributing, it's more than $280,000. It's well over $400,000 when you take into account maintenance. That being said, there has been no attempt made to try to get funding from the other districts who send their students to GBEX. To our knowledge, there has not been. Now, perhaps someone from the administration could perhaps answer that for us, but we have been at the table several times requesting that this be done, and warnings have been given, as a matter of fact, if it were not done, what was going to happen. We take no pleasure in this. We take no pleasure in this. We know that GBEX provides a service to youngsters. I believe in that program. But when you're looking at a budget that we're dealing with here at the co-op, for our, and there are students too, don't misunderstand me, but we have asked over and over and over again. And to our knowledge, unless we have not been told accurate information, nothing has been done. Peter, I see, welcome this evening, thank you. Would you like to speak to that?
I would, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Peter Stackhouse. I reside in Kensington, and I am the Executive Director of the Great Bay Charter School. I initially came tonight to respond to a lot of public comments that were made at the last board meeting related to sort of the feeling that GBEX was a drain on the cooperative school district. And I get the sense that I'm getting more of that tonight. I do have a letter that I've written, and I would like to read it if you would.
By all means, please,
Okay,
Peter,
thank
of
you.
course.
And I do have copies for the board. To the members of the Cooperative School Board, I write this letter in response to your most recent public Cooperative School Board discussion related to the Great Bay Charter School and the annual financial support provided by the district. Several members made public comments at your last meeting and have subsequently told parents calling to inquire that GBEX administration failed to provide requested information to the superintendent or meet stated conditions for continued board financial support. After his GBEX study committee, which concluded its review last year, Dr. Ryan verbally informed me of 3 conditions that we would need to meet if GBEX was to continue its relationship with the district. Meet with SAU 16 administrators on a more regular basis to discuss various issues of mutual concern. Share and participate in professional development opportunities and initiatives that would benefit our students and staff, and allow him to network with area superintendents and Commissioner of Education on our mutual behalf to develop potential new revenue streams. I readily accepted and agreed to work together to build a stronger, more mutually beneficial relationship. I've met several times with different SAU administrators related to a variety of topics ranging from special education to food service. Associate Superintendent Esther Asbell and I have met most often on a variety of academic and supervisory topics, but I will readily admit we did a better job last year and in the fall this year than our most recent schedules around the holidays. 50% of the GBEX teachers participated in an SAU 16 sponsored multi-day professional development conference this summer at considerable expense for the school, and the team developed a plan related to increasing student engagement, an agency that was eagerly embraced by our staff. We were also asked to implement and provide feedback on the Choose Love program that we are currently using as a driving cog in our advisory program. We hope that the feedback that our teachers have already provided and plan to continue to provide to Associate Superintendent Asbell will assist the implementation of this program at Exeter High School. If there's a condition that I have not fulfilled, I am unaware what it is. At your last meeting, several members made public statements that in tone and substance could only be interpreted by the audience as our school was a drain on the cooperative district, constantly taking but giving little or nothing in positive in return. As a 33-year educator in this district and in GBEX, working to create a flexible, nurturing environment for students, this public impression is more of a personal and professional gut punch than being informed by Dr. Ryan on Thursday of the board's intent to cover the remainder of our funding over the next 2 years. Not once in my tenure at GBEX has concern about electricity, water, and maintenance been raised as a funding issue with us. Nor did it come out in public discussion that our classrooms and equipment are used by the Exeter Adult Education Evening Program classes on many evenings each week throughout the school year without any cost to that program. We recently negotiated a 3-year lease signed by the board, and at no time were these topics discussed with us or raised as a point of concern. A board member seemed publicly frustrated by not having oversight of the Great Bay Charter School budget or having ready access to our salaries and benefits. I feel obligated to remind the members that from its proposal in '04 and formation in '05 until 2011, GBEX was very much under collaborative oversight of the Co-op Board and the GBEX Board of Trustees, It was a unilateral decision on the part of the Cooperative Board to cut employment ties with GBEX administrators, teachers, and support staff for 2012. Further related to board oversight, 2 members of the previous cooperative boards were on the GBEX Board of Trustees when it was formed in 2005. Those members, Chairman Roy Morissette and Vice Chair Lucy Cushman, still serve on the GBEX board today and are current members of the elected Cooperative Budget Advisory Committee. Another member questioned why a special educator and several paraprofessionals were working at GBEX. As a result of statutory requirements, New Hampshire school districts are responsible for supervising and providing related services to their resident students with IEPs enrolled at New Hampshire charter schools. The school implements the IEP, but the district retains oversight responsibilities. With a comparable caseload as a CMS or EHS special educator and need for parasupport, it has always been the case that these cooperative professionals work at the site where the students attend. Our relationship has always been a model for charter school/district support of students with IEPs and should be applauded statewide, not criticized locally. As you move forward with the $280,000 cut over 2 years and have directed Superintendent Ryan to develop a contingency for our students should GBEX not stay financially viable enough to operate, please consider why GBEX was proposed and started by then Superintendent Arthur Skip Hansen with board support in 2004. He recognized that a one-size-fits-all education will not work for all students in this district, and that there was a segment of the student population who were not fully connected and able to thrive at EHS, and there was a way to leverage state funding in order to facilitate improving this for students. Even as his successor, Superintendent Michael Morgan, severed the GBEX employees from the cooperative in 2012, he maintained and encouraged board support for our school because he recognized the educational alternative we provide and that our cooperative parents' tax dollars go to the school district, not our school. Believe me, our kids are not at GBEX because of the glitz and glamour of the Tuck Learning Campus, but it is there that they have found an educational home. For each one, something wasn't working quite right academically, socially, or emotionally. They have appreciated the opportunity to purchase a lunch from Cooperative Food Service, although this ability is likely going away next year. For each one, GBEX has provided an opportunity to feel like a part of a family while at school. As a true school district choice, just like a small business providing goods or services, GBEX demonstrates that families are true consumers. If they are not pleased with our program, they will seek other options. Since opening, our program has been celebrated and supported by previous cooperative educators, boards, and administrations. Until now, GBEX has never been portrayed by this board in public as a frustrating drain on budget and/or resources. Public statements and board action further indicate the collective belief that your funding cut will likely mean the financial death of the Great Bay Charter School. Yet you plan to move ahead anyway. Our school community will pull together because our students are simply too important to let this endeavor fail. As a cooperative school district taxpayer and school administrator, I understand what pressure you face as board members with the rising budget costs and a building project whose cost people habitually complain about, and now there are various personnel cuts being proposed. I further recognize that financial support for GBEX probably seems like a welcome piece of ripe, low-hanging fruit to be easily removed from the complicated political landscape. That fruit, unfortunately, currently represents 65 students who, for whatever reason, needed to seek out another option. Please consider the Great Bay Charter School. Please consider that the Great Bay Charter School currently runs a program for 151 students with 15 total employees and a current budget of $1.48 million. Our current projected cost per pupil is $9,850, $7,188 of which is funded by the state of New Hampshire and not local taxpayers. District support is about 19% of our total current budget and amounts to approximately $4,300 for each student residing in the cooperative. Fiscally speaking, we are the biggest publication bargain in this town, doing a considerable amount with substantially less. Over the years, people have questioned why cooperative taxpayers are supporting students from other communities. I ask you to consider a valid but alternative view that funding brought to GBEX by 86 non-cooperative resident students helps leverage a unique state funding source in order to help us operate a viable program. As you move forward with your directive to Dr. Ryan to develop a plan for cooperative resident students at GBEX whose educational home you no longer wish to support, please seek the input of those 65 students and their parents who sought us out as an educational alternative and consider our program worthy enough to continue to educate their students. What kind of a program can be provided that will embrace and support the uniqueness and ever-emerging academic potential of our students with over 75% state funding? I understand that you've already made your decision to cut funding to the Great Bay Charter School, and I appeal to you to consider discontinuing your negative portrayal of our school, its operation, and our professional efforts on behalf of our students to justify your decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Would anyone else like to comment from the board? Travis?
So I have a few comments. And Mr. Stackhouse, thank you very much for your comments to the board and to the public. But I do refute a few of the things you've stated in that letter. Off the top of my head, a few things. It was never once, and I can only speak for myself, but the board has been pretty much all collective in our approach. It was never once considered low-hanging fruit in a political process. This is an agonizing decision, and we talked extensively about the students, the impacts that this might have on the cooperative students that attend. I do find it interesting that it took us getting to this point before we got really any type of serious response to the funding issues currently at GBEX. In response to some of Lucy's comments, and Lucy, I have the utmost respect for you, I hope you know that. I've known you my whole life, but I'm ashamed of the GBEX board and of its administration. We have been talking about this in public in various board meetings for at least 2 years. We've had these conversations back when Superintendent Morgan was with us. And to my knowledge, very little, if anything, had been done to improve the financial stability of GBEX. Personally, I fully support the program itself, what it does for those students, and some of the parents that have reached out to us over the past week or two, some of whom who are here this evening, have not even been informed about the fiscal challenges that GBEX faces. And when they were informed, they were surprised and willing to step up and try to help, which I applaud them for those efforts. But it took getting to this point, at least from my understanding, and I'll certainly defer to anyone else if I missed anything, for us to have a serious conversation about the fiscal viability of GBEX. It's my understanding that regardless of what the cooperative board does, within a few years, if nothing changes from a revenue standpoint, GBEX will be fiscally bankrupt. Mr. Stackhouse, please correct me if I'm wrong.
I very much disagree with your statement.
So then please tell me what funding sources are going to improve that. I would like to know.
So, I mean, the bottom line is that at our school, our biggest fundraiser is enrollment. One of the things that we needed to do was stabilize our enrollment so that we could meet our operating costs. We, over the last 2 years, have initiated the formation of 6th grade at the school, which has made a significant difference in aligning with the transition that students moving from a K-5 program to a middle school program. It was a position that it made sense. So that has made a significant difference in our enrollment for grade 6 and also our ability to have a viable 7th grade program. Our budgets over the last 2 years have actually, well, last year and this current year are anticipated to produce a sizable surplus, sizable, not on the scale of the cooperative budget, but in the $10,000 to $15,000 range. For our school, having a surplus at the end of the year is a great thing. We have looked at all sorts of funding sources, and we have we're beginning to develop relationships with other organizations, small businesses. We haven't developed any kinds of corporate sponsorship or things like that as of yet. But our budget going forward with the stability of our enrollment, the small increases that we get in state funding, potential new enrollments, and support from the district allowed us to be a viable operation. You know, I hear you say that we were given mandates and we were given, you know, conditions, and I absolutely agree. Ryan and I had a conversation after his, you know, when I actually had presented at the Finance Committee, Chair Roy Morissette and I presented at the Finance Committee, and the members at that point were very supportive and said, we have a new superintendent coming on board, let's let him process the situation and make recommendations, and we'll go forward. I would just like to say that in my own interactions with Dr. Ryan, which have been very collegial, I did not have the feeling that there was a condition that if we don't do X, then Y will happen. And I understand that maybe that's your understanding, but the information that you have that led you to that is not the same information that I had that I presented to the board. I felt like we were stabilizing our enrollment, that we were working to improve our situation with regard to other sources of funding, and you know, I really feel like we're gonna make this happen. We have to make it happen for the kids, and you know, maybe our community support needs to increase, and maybe but I still feel like there's somewhat of an obligation on the school district that formed our school to at least recognize that if 40 to 45% of the students are here from the district, that we're willing to support them, and we're not asking, you know, I understand this decision's been made. I just wish that you would not continue to state that the reason that it's being made is because we've done nothing. We're in a stronger situation financially than we've been in 3 years. I continue to work with the board to make sure that continues. I mean, I told our community, I told our, I told our staff, we will figure this out. You know, the consideration of a $140,000 cut, which probably represents, you know, 9% of our budget, we should be able to accommodate that. I don't know about the next $240,000, honestly. It gives us a little bit of time. We have the opportunity to take a shot at it, and we're going to work. But I really resent the implication that we've done nothing, because everything I do on every day, whether it's, I'm not even going to talk about the hats that I wear, but I will tell you that first and foremost, funding and keeping the school financially viable year after year is at the forefront. And I don't know where the message is getting mixed. I wish that the board would consider that maybe there's a misunderstanding about what was communicated to the board versus what was communicated to me. I was blindsided by the fact that the message is coming out that we've done nothing, and that we were told as a condition of receiving continued funding support that we had to do X, Y, and Z beyond what I expressed about what Dr. Ryan told me. I fully agree with what he said. I thought it was a very reasonable and a welcome suggestion, and I feel like, you know, maybe there's some information that you're getting that I'm not. For that,
Peter, I'd like to respond to two things that you said and ask a question of Dr. Ryan
Sure.
as well. First of all, I appreciate all that you've said tonight, and this is not easy for me. And I think I've been to GBEX on a few occasions, and I have always commented how impressed I've been. So one of the things that I felt, the comments that you made earlier, relative to at the last meeting, that there were members of the board who were implying that your program was less than stellar. I'm going to use that word. I'm not saying you did, but I don't recall anyone even hinting at something like that. I think collectively we feel that GBEX provides an amazing program for those youngsters, for kids who cannot do well, if you will, or function well, I should say, in a more traditional educational environment. That's one of the reasons that the last 7 years that I've been on this board, I've supported continuing the funding for it. So I'm not sure where that's coming from, but that may be a perception that you had or other people had. My second point is that I believe that you had indicated earlier that one of the criteria for our continuing funding was having contributions made from other school districts. And Dr. Ryan, I believe you contacted superintendents from other districts that are sending their students, and could you tell us what the results of that were?
So Peter and I had this conversation on Thursday, and I informed him that, whoops, there goes me, that the superintendents were not inclined to include it in their budgets because their boards would not support sending tax dollars from their towns to a charter school. And so we're going to continue to try and work on that. The other piece that Peter and I had spoken about on Thursday was, well, there are two things I want to address, if I may.
Of course.
First, the implication of a condition. Peter was never there because I was unaware that it was not a condition, that if you did not, then this would happen. There was never that condition.
I appreciate that.
We engaged in an earnest agreement and relationship to try to find a way to generate more revenue streams and build up what's happening in GBEX. And we were in lockstep with that when we met last spring to do that. In terms of trying to reach out to either corporations, small business, and so forth, as a leader of an organization, that was something that you should have been doing, and that's something that had not been done. And I had been seeking revenue from the superintendents. I just wanted to make sure we clarified that, okay? But also on Thursday, what I expressed to you, first of all, was this was a conversation that occurred in the budget meeting with the board, in the board meeting, excuse me, on the 19th, and not necessarily something that had occurred prior at budget advisory. It wasn't on the radar. It wasn't on my radar. And that despite the $140,000 being cut from the budget for next year, that Esther and I were going to continue to work with you to try and improve the financial condition or the financial situation of GBEX, as well as continue to provide professional development for your staff and continue to provide any assistance that we could to help keep the program going. My belief is because the $140,000 is being eliminated does not mean that GBEX is going away. I've made that distinction clear last spring when I expressed to this board the results of the study that we conducted, and my recommendation was our students attend Great Bay Charter School. We have an opportunity to really improve what's happening up there by helping, because those are our kids we're working with. And with the other 68 students, those are our kids too, because for me, they're all our kids. And that's why I had asked this board, who last year were interested in reducing funding, that they give us some time to work together to see what we could do to shore up what's happening operations and finance-wise. And so our commitment to you as an administrative team at SAU 16 remains to help you do that. The $140,000 that's being reduced is something I can't make come back, but I can try and help and work with you and your parents, as I expressed to you on Thursday, to try and replace that and see what we can do to get you in a better place. Because again, they are our students. Now, I'm still going to follow the charge of the board and build with our staff what a replicable program would look like at the middle school and the high school. But my hope, Peter, is that we don't have to use it.
And I very much appreciate your comments, and I feel like that is very much in line with my understanding as we had our conversations and have worked over the year. I accept the criticism of not having corporate sponsorship or business funding in place. I accept that. However, I feel, Dr. Ryan, that your message to me right now is a very different message than the board is portraying in public, and I feel there's a disconnect there, and I would ask the board, make your decision, but make it on the reasons that you need to make it, which is fiscal, not punishing us for something we did or didn't do based on information that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
I'm going to go. I can't reach this. Cheryl McDonough, Kensington. I'm the former executive director of the Great Bay Charter School. Hi, Bob. How are you tonight? I just want to clarify a couple of things. Every year for years, I wrote an individual letter and sent an invoice to every superintendent of every district where the students were coming to our school, told them what the funding was, how desperate we were for money, and we were told, and Peter and I signed those letters together, do not be in touch with us again. I would ask to go to speak at a board meeting. We've done all of the things that you're talking about. There's only so many times I'm going to call Sanborn and have them say to me, don't call here again. There's only so many letters that we can write before we say, I got it, you're not going to help us. We've done all of that. We ran a thrift store. I was a member of the Chamber of Commerce. I was at businesses. We ran Business After Dark. We've done all of these things. You know, if you're unhappy with the adults, and I still consider myself an adult of this community and the way they're running themselves, don't punish these kids for $140,000. I saw how much that was on your pie chart. I saw that. If you're unhappy with what Peter's doing, bring him in. I know I used to do that and say, this is what we need you to do. But this is a drop in your bucket, and we've got kids here. We have alumni here, and this school saved their lives. And we have done all of the things you're talking about. Believe me, and Helen, you know me, you know I have. And it didn't do us any good. And Mike Morgan said to me, we will never give up on the kids of GBEX. So we've done it all. I used to come to the co-op board. For the last few years, we were never invited. You know, we came by invitation. But we have done these things, and these kids matter. And the reality is, you're getting the property taxes of these parents. You're not sending that all back to us. We're looking for a pittance, really. In the scope of your budget, we're a drop. So Peter's not going to ask you, I would ask you to reconsider. I would absolutely ask you to reconsider. And that's it. Thank you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Cheryl. Laura Bricker. I've lived here in Exeter for 22 years, and I am also a GBEX parent. My son, Will, has been there for 2 years, and he's the first 6th grade class, and I don't know what we would have done without that school for him. It really has been a godsend for him. And I had some other things I was going to talk about here related to special education, but Mr. Stackhouse gave a pretty thorough explanation, so I'm not going to go back there. But I would echo what Cheryl said. I would ask you to reconsider and give us one more year of funding at the full $280,000. I'm going to say, you know, I'm part of the new parent booster group. We have a wait list for the first time in some of our grades at the school, because the school is actually growing, especially at the middle school level. And along with that has come a whole new group of parents that are really engaged, and we are fundraising. We are working with businesses in the community. I'm not going to name names yet because it's preliminary, to come up with some signature annual fundraising events. Like, we know that we need to make up the gap, but you know, it's going to take some time, and I feel like cutting that budget by half is going to have a really big effect on that school. And, you know, Cheryl was being modest when she was talking about students that were alumni. Mr. McDonough, I'd like to recognize, and Miss Phoenix. Miss Phoenix grew up in Stratham. She is the art teacher at GBEX. Mr. McDonough grew up in Kensington, and he is the humanities teacher. Both of them are graduates of the school. They came back to that school where they are probably making a whole lot less than they would make at another school because they believe in what that school does for students. And I just feel like we really owe it to these kids to support the school for one more year, give the parents, give the school time to, you know, really put some plans together to fundraise so that we can keep things going. I just feel like we really owe it to those 65 kids.
Thank you, Lara. I think we'll have time for just a couple of more comments and questions, and then we're going to have to bring the hearing to a close because we have to go into our full board meeting, so please feel free to continue.
My name is Michelle Suited. I'm from Brentwood. I have a few questions. So they were talking about reconsidering this budget. Is that an option? Will you reconsider this budget? Because I looked through this, and there's a lot of information that I would like to ask questions on, but you probably don't want to be here all night for me to do that. So I'd like to present those questions to you maybe by email or something and get a response, but I'm not going to waste my time doing that if you're not in a position to reconsider these numbers. So will you reconsider these numbers?
Any reconsideration of numbers would come during our full board meeting that will follow this hearing.
You mean tonight?
Tonight, and/or at the deliberative session, which will be held on February the 6th here at the high school.
Okay. How many students are at CMS and EHS? Thanks, Liz. And my other question is, there was a lot of conversation. What is the amount that you're cutting from the Great Bay?
$140,000.
If I could offer this little suggestion, if our concern is really for the students, maybe the $142,000 increase in the administrative salaries could be cut, and that could be given to Great Bay instead.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hey guys, how's it going? I had to follow Ms. McDonough and Mr. Stackhouse at graduation. It seems appropriate that I'm stuck following them now. My name's John McDonough, and I am an alumni of Great Bay Charter School, as well as many in attendance tonight. I think it's important for one of us to get up here and speak about sort of what the school has done for us. Now, I was a member of our first class at Great Bay Charter School. I had the pleasure, we opened in January, I had the pleasure of going to Exeter High School. So I was able to sort of see both sides of the fence. And during my time at Exeter High School, I was involved, well, during my entire high school career, I was a special ed student, and I was one of these students that you guys are talking about and that have been talked about in regards to the special ed funds that come our way to GBEX. During my time at Exeter High School, while I enjoyed myself very much, was told that college wasn't going to be an option for me. I had one particular gentleman tell me that I'd be more likely to be in jail at 30 than graduated from college. And I came to charter school alongside one of our really great special educators, George McKinney, who now works over at CMS, because, I didn't feel comfortable with my direction. I thought I was capable of more. And I'd like to think that I wouldn't like to think charter schools responsible for everything that came after, including that cute little baby that you heard gooing and guying throughout the presentation. I went on to college from charter school. Every student at Great Bay was required to apply to college. It was not something that was on my radar. I am a proud alumni of Northern Vermont University. I am also a proud alumni of UNH, where I received my master's. UNH, where I also taught. I took special pleasure in teaching some of the educators at Exeter High School's children while I was at UNH. I am pleased to say that while I'm not 30 yet, it's a lot more likely that my first book is going to come out before I'm 30 than that I'm in jail. I'm still leaving room for that, because I feel like you have to keep it interesting, especially as a writer. But everything that I have in comes from GBEX right now. And I'll tell you, know, I did feel like I owed a massive debt, Laura was right, to charter school. And I'll tell you what, my wife and I both happened to be at Dickinson State University, which is in North Dakota, for those who aren't familiar with the Great Wide West. We were both at Dickinson State University, which is where I went after my time at UNH, where I was able to teach alongside Pulitzer Prize winners, where I was able to teach beside some of our greatest living authors, where I was able to give readings from one side of this country to the other, where I was able to fill up the Prudential Center in Boston, when that necessarily wasn't on the radar when I was spending 7 out of 8 periods in the resource room at Exeter High School. That was not on my radar, I can tell you that. But I can also tell you that my wife has enjoyed me more than the night 5 months ago, 6 months ago, when I came home and asked to move my family and my freshly born baby Elizabeth across the country, and asked her to leave her job. I left my job, and I'm not gonna discuss a ton of that, but you know, I believe in charter school enough to do that. And I just think, before you guys start mortgaging kids' futures, I think you should see some of the receipts. And I'd like to think, in some small way, I'm one of those receipts from charter school. And I would like to think that some of those alumni sitting over there are receipts from what, you know, that drain, that little fingernail on the graph. You do have some receipts for that. I don't think you got nothing. Certainly, my family is, I kind of think it was worth it. It was worth it to me. But what I really think it's worth, and who I really think it's worth it for, are my students that came out to support their school tonight. From Larissa, who didn't want to hear a word I had to say when I rolled in, and gave me attitude for the first month that I worked there. And somehow I made it onto our Christmas card list. To Tim Hollister, who came in unable to sit down and is now comparing Star Wars characters to Oedipus in my class. I'd like to think that these students are gonna have the gifts that were given to me, because I think each and every one of them deserve it.
Thank you, John. We'll take one more comment from the public. Janet, I think you will be, and then I'll open up to any further comments or questions about the budget from the board.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I'm not sure if mine is more appropriate for when you break into your board meeting, so just let me know.
All right.
So Janet Pryor, I'm an 8th grade English teacher at CMS, the president of the Teacher Association, and I've lived in Stratham for over 30 years. And I have a question. Part of it's really procedural again. I'm told that there was some kind of vote that it was not unanimous, and right now I'm referring to the decision to reduce the reading and the computer, music, art, world language, the subjects that we saw up on the screen. There was some sort of vote that was taken, so I assume there was a motion that you folks had maybe when you went into non-public back in December. Is that correct?
We had discussion relative to personnel cuts in non-public, yes.
Okay. And I was told that the vote was not unanimous, and I would like to respectfully ask to poll the board on how you voted.
Well, I would have to go back and check the minutes, which we'll be approving in the at the board meeting coming up.
Okay, so would this be more appropriate to ask in your next session?
One of the changes in state law regarding minutes, Janet, was that non-public votes have to be published, and it has to be by member. And so our non-public minutes will reflect that this evening, but those are still unapproved non-public minutes. So that will all take place in the meeting that we have when we're done here.
All right, so we'll be back. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Are there any other questions from the board or comments from the board relative to any discussion this evening? Deb?
Yeah, I have a question. I wanted to find out, well, first of all, let me just say a quick comment. I'm usually the board member that attends the graduation ceremony, and it's very moving, and we all end up in tears. And please don't think for a minute that we don't value the students, the school, and what you guys are going through. That's not at all how our board feels. So I just wanted to say that. Second question is for Mr. Stackhouse. I wanted to know when the lease was signed for the 3-year. He said it was recently signed. I wanted to know.
That was signed in November. And that was
So
signed
just
by
a few
myself
months
and the
ago.
business administrator.
Okay, so 2 months ago.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Deb. Any other questions or comments from the board? Bob?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'd just like to add, thank you for coming. I think this is very convincing tonight. The second thing is
Could you speak up just a little, Bob? Thank you.
The second issue is, as the newest board member on the team here, I think that for myself, there's really a disconnect between the GBEX and what's going on here. And that's something that I have a problem with. So I think that's not just on this board's part, but GBEX has to be, there has to be a communication, and it's not there. So I think that's something we need to work out between us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Yes, Paul?
I had a few questions. Please tell me if these would be more appropriate for during our meeting.
that's
but
fine.
I figured I'd ask them now since we're asking questions
Sure.
for the budget. Both for you, Dr. Ryan. We had talked about funding for the YES program during our last meeting. And I believe where we had left it was that the program would continue, and you and your team were going to take a look at exactly how that funding was going to work out. And I was just wondering if you could give us an update on that.
Certainly. So we're working with our special education staff. Actually, if I would you indulge me in asking Ms. Rist?
Yeah, of course.
Sure.
To speak? Yeah.
Helen, why don't you come to the microphone over there if you'd like? Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, Helen.
So in particular, through the board process, there was a total of about $130,000 that they wanted to see reduced in the special ed budget, particularly came under contracted services and the YES program, which is actually a regular education funded item. So I worked with Roz Moriarty, who's a special ed administrator here at the high school, around that amount, knowing that the YES program could not go back into the federal IDEA fund because that would be supplanting those funds because previously it was funded through the grant. Yes has been with us for about 6 years, and it initially came fully grant-funded through one of the title grants. Then it was shared with the IDEA grant for a couple of years. Then we moved part of it into the regular ed budget, and then the second part into the regular ed budget, so over a process of several years. So this is probably the second year this year that it's fully funded by regular ed. So the decision was that I spoke with Dr. Ryan that we would find those funds in special education, since the majority of the students who access the YES program do happen to be students who receive special education. Wasn't always that way, but it seems to be the trend that the direction is going. So since we initially got budget figures together last August, when our budget process started this year, August, July maybe, I don't know, it was very early. Each of the administrators in the buildings who oversee special education had an exorbitant amount of work to do to predict, with the upcoming 8th graders to the high school and 6th graders to the middle school, what their funds were going to need to be. And we take our best shot at that with what we know at that time. So in August, we put forth some figures. Come mid-September, they had changed again. School had secret information about who was back with us, who might have moved, who moved in. We get a lot of move-ins. So we updated our figures again. Updated them again in October, and those were the figures that got put forward to the Budget Advisory Committee. Those, at some point, you have to stop and work with the figures you have. So when this discussion came about, a month or so ago, I went back to Roz Moriarty. I said, do you have any new information? What is going on? Any new move-ins? Do we need to move figures up? Should we move figures down? How is it looking? Because it often is just a shot at the dartboard sometime with the way things change with our student population. So she was able to find out from some of the contracted services for the our students in transition, that large group that she said is moving into those 18 to 21 years. We have a large group this year of students joining what's called transition years. And that's why she projected 2 figures for the total amount of services for those kiddos. In the worst case scenario, best case scenario. Remember, she explained that she has to assume most of them will need a one-on-one person with them when they go out into the community to do the volunteer or the job work that we are required to provide them an opportunity to do. And if that's the worst case scenario, this was her figure. Best case scenario, she's hoping some can go in small groups, may go to the same place, but those decisions aren't made. They still aren't made. But what we did find out was that a particular couple of students and a particular program we're hoping to enroll them in, they will not need a monitor on their bus to transport them there. That was a significant chunk of money. We also found out that, oh, I'm forgetting now, Dr. Ryan, do you have my email there? Because I didn't print that up. She had a couple of other similar things happening with students that she was going to be able to reduce the cost for, because the situation had changed. In addition to that, we can bring into the IDEA grant fund, that the federal money we get, her professional development costs that she had put in her budget. That would be special education focused professional development for special education teachers that she wants them to have. They don't necessarily come to her and say, I want to do this. She says, no, we got these kids coming in. I need you 4 people to go to this training, or you're already certified in this, you need to keep your certification up, so you need to go back and be recertified in whatever methods and techniques you use. With a staff the size she has, is usually $8,000 to $10,000 a year in that budget. So we can bring that into the grant. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, because I didn't print, of all the things I didn't print that, because Dr. Ryan said
You
he's
had
got
most of them, yep.
What were
You were able to decrease contracted services by about $60,000.
Right.
And that was due to the decreased cost for transportation piece, because you don't need monitors.
Right.
There were 2 transition age students that.
Oh, they're going to SST.
Correct.
Yes, they were accepted to SST. That's a significant amount of money we were able to save.
It's about
because otherwise-
$54,000.
Yes, we were going to have to pay to have them have those private services through the contractor.
Correct.
Thank you. And then I think the other one was pressure. I knew I was forgetting something important. Thank you.
You got them all.
So that's, that was our goal, is to reduce the overall budget, whether it's partly, out of special ed funds and then that regular ed piece for YES, by that amount of money. Because twofold, the problem with the YES program is not only can we not absorb it by the grant, but it's needed. and there are multiple kids who access it. And at this point, it's sort of part of their educational plan that they have access to these services. So I can't take that out of an IEP without having a meeting with multiple parents and trying to explain to them why we're no longer going to do that, because it's been working. And the other one was a service that is provided for some of our students in one of our specialized programs. And we've tried it other ways with those kiddos, and this is the way that we've gotten the biggest bang for our buck and progress for them. So I'm not willing to have them change that to potentially lose that progress for those kiddos. So I would rather find the funds somewhere else. And again, that is a service that is in their IEPs. So it's hard to kind of go and look at specific items and reduce them without a lot of advance notice for special education, which is why working within the whole general budget is something we tried to do. But also why it's really difficult to reduce special ed spending sometimes, because there's a factor that is unsure, that we don't know. It changes monthly, sometimes weekly, depending on referrals that come in the door, students who move in, and sometimes students move out. More likely they're moving in.
Thank you, Helen.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Do you have another question?
I did have one other question.
Sure.
So I know that the budget before us includes removing the separate reading courses for 6th grade at CMS. My question is, I guess, kind of twofold. I mean, first of all, is there a specific dollar figure that we can be aware of if we were to keep that reading program in place for next year, what that dollar figure would be, and also if there's specific repercussions of doing that we should be aware of as a board?
There are.
Okay, thank you.
We prepared that in the event we would talk about that.
Great, thank you.
It's in here somewhere.
If we get some more chairs, we have a lot of people standing.
I bet they'll leave once this is over.
I'm
They kind of stay for the meeting.
Yeah. They may leave
Happy to
after the
have Bob.
hearing.
Yeah, Bob, you do that.
Okay, Molly, you're on.
Well, so on average, well, the total 3 positions is a total of just shy of $360,000.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Paul?
I guess that answers part A of the question.
Okay.
The other part of the question was with regard to, you know, if that were to be added back in for next year's budget, are there additional repercussions of that change that we need to be made aware of? And I don't know if that's something that Dr. Ryan would be better equipped to.
Can you repeat the number?
We're going to go to recess in a few minutes, and if the folks are staying, we could get more.
I said it was just shy of the 360.
Yes, but I have a feeling that if Ms. Wands can speak to that, because she also has an understanding of if we were not changing the day schedule next year, which would involve some of the reductions,
Right.
what the implications would be. So
Okay.
could we ask
Yeah,
her to
absolutely.
respond to that?
Thank you.
So that would eliminate the HOC block, which provides interventions and enrichment to students, and the 7-period day that the recommendation was, to move from an 8-period to a 7-period day. And having, making up teams of 4 teachers to a team rather than 5.
So, Ms. Fons, can you help me understand why that would have the impact on the 7-period day? Just kind of talk that through so I can understand why that's a repercussion of that change.
Well, the current makeup is having a reading and an English language arts teacher, 2 separate teachers mixed with a math, a science, and a social studies. That's 5 teachers, that's 5 periods.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's lunch, and then 2 more periods are their off-team, so to speak, classes. So with having teams of 4, which currently in 7th and 8th grade, there's math, science, English language arts, social studies, when you have a team made up of 4, that 5th block, the 5th teaching period, is the HAWC block to provide for in a multi-tiered system of support for all students. That's your tiered of support for all children. We currently don't have that, where we aren't able to provide support for students who require support. They may not necessarily be identified under IDEA, but they certainly struggle in areas, whether that's reading or mathematics. And so having that intervention or enrichment, many of our students benefit from enrichment. Having that in the day, again, we currently don't have that. And that's a multi-tiered system of the sport, which in 2010 or 11, the New Hampshire Department of Education began the implementation of that, and with the expectation from then Commissioner Virginia Barry that would be implemented in schools across the state. And the cooperative middle school in the 20 years of its existence has not implemented it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Any other questions from the board? Melissa?
It's actually a comment regarding what Paul has just asked. It's a comment about the numbers, but I think the discussion, it might fit in better with the actual meeting. But my question is, or my comment, I guess, is the fact that my understanding is the concern isn't necessarily, it could be doing away with reading, but it's the process. We've just started this pilot, and we really want to see data. So we'd have a full school year of data. So my understanding is to continue with these teachers, it would be $360,000 approximately. I just want us to consider being consistent. And that being said, we also have a math program that we just started piloting this year. That's my understanding, that we started piloting in September, that we wouldn't have a full year of data until June. So if we're putting back the reading program or not, I'm wondering if we need to consider putting the $58K back in for the math program, because we give a full year to see how both programs do. And then next year's budget cycle, we would consider. So it's just a comment.
We didn't remove them.
The math program is still in there.
Right, but for consistency purposes, both pilots started at the same time.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So we're kind of considering one and not necessarily the other, so I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'm going to call the hearing to an end at 7:45. We'll take a 10-minute recess and then come back to begin our full board meeting. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Took a little break there, had our photo taken for the yearbook. So I appreciate the cooperation on that. All right, we are back in session for our full board meeting at this point, and I will open it up to any public input. Now, public input means, for those of you who have not been to our board meeting, you have certainly the right to come to the microphone, say anything that you wish to say. There's no interaction between the board and the public during that time. So this is not a time for question and answer. So is there any public input? Is there anyone who would like to speak?
So I had my earlier question, but we might be able to suspend that if, my first question is it, I'm hearing that you might be reconsidering part of what was presented earlier. Is that true that you might, because if you are going to reconsider and have a different vote, then it makes your previous, if I asked you to poll the board, it makes that kind of moot. So
we don't know until we get to that discussion, Janet. If there's going to be a reconsideration or any change, it would have to there be a motion from a board member and a second, and then a discussion and a vote.
Okay.
So I can't predict that until we get to that part of the meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll just suspend that for now.
All right, Travis.
Helen, if I just want to ask, would it be appropriate for us, if we get to that point in the meeting and that does occur, to then allow Janet the opportunity to come to the microphone again for that one comment only?
Sure. Yeah.
I have no issue with that at
Okay,
all,
I just-
certainly, no, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, great.
So now, the other thing that, listening to everything that was said and listening to Principal Wands again, I was thinking, I don't disagree with what Principal Wands was saying about our need for this RTI intervention and the different tiers of support, and if you're in education, you know that that's necessary. My question is, can we think of doing it a different way, that we would not have to cut the reading positions? So for the 3 that are in 6th grade right now, one person is retiring out. Nutrition could take care of that position, still saving money. The other 2, if we did not cut those positions, why couldn't those, all right, so in 6th grade, it's the 4 like regular courses, plus they have the reading. Why don't we take that 5th position off team, similar to art is off team and other UAs, and let the students access the reading curriculum, maybe those who need it the most, we start there, and maintain the reading program, but just do it differently. So why do we have to have either or? In order to have the different tiers of support, we have to lose reading. I don't see them as mutually exclusive. I think we could think of a different way and maintain the program.
Thank you, Janet.
Thanks.
Yes, please, hello.
Hi. My name's Will Hollister. I'm a student at GBEX.
Hi,
and
Will.
I went through CMS and the SAU 16 district, except for EHS. And at my time at CMS, I was told that I basically, in my math class, I was not allowed to move on in learning because I didn't write things down. I just put answers on paper. Even though I would get them right, I would fail. And at GBEX, I'm able to learn at my own pace, and I'm able to learn in my own way, even if it means, even if it means just writing down answers. And also, I'd like to say, we don't have sports at our school. We don't have clubs, really. And the clubs we do have are minimal in numbers. We also don't have arts or music or theater. But the one thing we do have is the school itself and the family that the school is. And I can say that it's really important to have that individually. And it helps with getting to know our teachers and our homeroom and the kids in the school, knowing that we're all in it together, and the teachers there. I think this was said earlier, but they're not in it for the money. No teacher ever is, but they're really there just to help more than anything else. So, yeah.
Thank you, Will.
Okay. Hi, my name is Tim Holster. Bye, Will. But I went into GBEX, thinking, or first off, I went to CMS. I've done both. But I went to GBEX thinking, English is a joke, social studies is a joke. I don't need art to move on. And why do I need math? I'm not going to use it. But I entered math with Miss Hammond, and that was really fun, and it made me want to pursue math more now. And I ended up being moved up to pre-algebra, and we talked about how I'm at the same level as some freshmen, so that was a big upgrade. And then I walked into Mr. McDonough's class, I'm like, this is a joke, I'm not gonna do any work, but first month I started doing a lot more work. I mean, I don't do much work anymore, but that's an attention thing. But his class is super fun. We get into discussions every morning after Patriots games. I'll discuss to him. He's a Jets fan. I laughed at him for that. But then I went to art with Miss Phoenix, and that was amazing. I got more into art. Started doing drips, like the drip drawing. Don't know how to explain it, but I love those. I get to basically draw whatever I want, but I also have projects. Those are fun. But just saying that GBEX helped me a lot. And, you know, I always thought that I can't go to college. I'm not going to. But now I'm really considering going to college. And I didn't want to go there because I had no friends. But I immediately made friends, like on my shadow day. And then I made more friends. So, yeah. GBEX has helped me through a lot more than just school. It's helped me through, like, you know, family and all that. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Good job.
Sorry, I just don't know how to do this. So my name is Kelsey. I went through CMS and 2 years of Exeter High School, and going to GBEX is one of the best decisions that I've ever made, because not only are you a number in like this huge school, like it truly is a family. I know that sounds so generic, but it really is. Like when you walk to school in the morning, like everyone says hi to you because everyone knows your name. And coming from a student that has struggled with an IEP my entire life, I've always been told that college is an option, and even from SST, I was told to drop my class because my teacher didn't think that I was going to pass, because she didn't believe to follow my IEP the way that it was written. And I've struggled with that my entire life. And even through Exeter, I was always told, like, you can't be a teacher, like, college isn't the best for you. But going to GBEX has taught me that I can do whatever I want to, and that the possibilities are endless. And being in a small class, it enables you to make such good connections with all of your teachers. And like, I put so much trust in all of my teachers, and like, they're like your second parents when you really think about it. But thank you.
Thank you. Okay, did you want to say something else? Okay, it would have to be short, hun, because we need to open it to anybody else who wants to speak. Thank you.
Real quick. So, oh God, now I forget what I'm gonna say. Oh yeah. So from what I've like at this point in like my school life, I'm gonna have to start doing like midterms and stuff, which sounds very generic, but from what I've heard from my brother who came to EHS, the midterms are a test that it's just a standard test. And what I like about GBEX more than anything is the fact that even at the part of school where I'm getting the biggest grade, like the biggest grade percentage from one thing, is I get to express myself with creativity at that thing more than anything else. And all of our stuff is project-based. I was able to design a road trip to Colorado for my math class, so that was pretty fun. So yeah, bye.
Great, thank you. All right. Is there any other public input?
Hi, Sue Garneau. I live in Exeter, and I teach at CMS. All the comments seem to be about, especially from GBEX, but in general, smallness and making a connection with teachers. And what has an impact on any person is feeling like you belong or feeling connected. And the positions that are being cut, all the positions at CMS, directly take away the number of teachers that work directly with students. And so while these people are saying, I have a great connection with a teacher, I feel like I belong, teachers know my name, adding more to the CMS classroom, I have a classroom of 24, in a kitchen is incredibly difficult. I think that more consideration should have been taken to look at positions that are high in salary, that of people who do not directly impact student learning every day.
Thank you. Any other public input? All right, then. Seeing none, we'll move along with our meeting, and we will start with approval of minutes. The first set of minutes are the December 19th public minutes. Are there any corrections or omissions?
I have just a couple of quick things.
Yes.
this one might be correct too, by the way, I'm not sure. Page 1, announcements and public input, when, under Liz, when she said that 2 of her constituents, is that right? Are they her constituents or just 2 constituents?
They were in her town, I believe, she said.
But doesn't that imply you were an elected
It should
official?
be, read something, 2 Brentwood residents, I would think is what was meant there, yep. I'm sorry?
I said 2 constituents, I didn't say.
Oh, you're, okay, so we could just leave out the words.
Just take out the word her.
Her, yeah, perfect, okay, thank you, Liz.
And then the next one, I just realized, I don't know if these pages are numbered. Okay. Right before, I don't even know what page it is, but it's number 7, committee reports, right above that.
Page 5.
Okay.
Is it page 5? Resolution, where it says Resolution 11 was submitted by Keene. I just want to clarify if that's how we voted. I don't remember. I don't remember voting that way. I just want to make sure that everybody looks, and maybe I'm just remembering incorrectly.
I believe there were 2 abstentions.
Which it's all listed, right?
1 abstention and 2 opposed.
See how it said that it listed the 2 people that were opposed? Let's see.
Okay, yes, go ahead, Travis, yeah.
Remember?
I think we did vote against that one because the prior resolution addresses the same concern and was the one supported by the NHSBA Executive Committee to address the same topic. So I think we voted to approve as a board the prior resolution and then voted to oppose the second one because it was already dealt with.
Okay, so I had voted against. I was the only one that voted against the prior one. That's why I'm questioning it. Does that make sense? So
That I don't remember, I'm afraid.
it's right here. It's right.
No, I don't remember, though, the vote on the second one.
I do.
You do? All
I
right,
did vote no.
okay.
Makes sense. All right. And then on the next page, regarding the property on Blue Hawk Drive, Melissa Litchfield asked about a cost analysis of lost revenue and rent. Let's see if it had been initiated. I had gone a little bit deeper. I had wanted just like an overall cost analysis for us to do anything with it, not just rent. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? And I know I didn't say just rent. So I don't know if we can put Melissa Litchfield, or Ms. Litchfield asked if a cost analysis had been initiated on this property or something.
Okay.
Okay.
Fine, sure.
The next one, it says the Finance Committee voted 6-1. I don't know if we want to change that to Budget Advisory.
Right, that should be Budget Advisory Committee. I found the same error, yes.
I know it was.
Should be corrected to 6-0.
Right, it wasn't the correct. That's it.
Okay, thank you. I did have one on the last page, letter B. I believe Robin Powley spoke relative to her daughter. She said she's currently in the sixth grade. Colors in that period. I believe that should read the pilot program. Is she in the pilot program? I believe that should read pilot program, currently in the 6th grade pilot program, just to correct that's not something that's being done across the board. Any other corrections or omissions? All in favor of approving the, I'm sorry, did you have a question?
I'm sorry, I did.
Yeah.
On page 6, those 2 votes that Melissa was asking about before, the last 2 resolutions,
Okay.
they both show 612 and 621, which adds up to 9, but David wasn't with us.
That's
so
true.
It should be 8. And I checked, the other ones all seem to add up to 8, but those 2 add up to 9 for some reason.
Okay, good point. Good catch. So maybe it should be 512?
I believe so.
Okay.
And then 521.
521, thank you. Thanks, Paul. Good math. All right. All in favor of approving the minutes as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry?
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, there was no motion.
so moved.
Thank you. All right, a second?
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? One abstention, thank you. All right. Thank you, Joanna, you're on the ball tonight. All right. The second set of minutes are the non-public minutes from Thursday, December 19th. Are there any corrections or omissions to those?
It's just a simple one. In the second paragraph, you don't have, or the motion to move is not in bold as everything else, all the other motions are. So I don't know if you
Okay.
want that or not. That's it.
I see.
Thank you. Yep, that makes sense. Thanks. Any other changes? Do I have a motion to accept the non-public minutes as amended?
So moved.
Thank you. Second? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? One abstention. Thank you. So going back to Janet's original question, now that these minutes have been approved, are you still asking to poll or have the information relative to the vote on that, or are you okay with that?
Well, I would ask for the poll unless you're going to end up making a motion to reconsider what you voted on before.
Well, we don't know yet what these will be made public, will they not?
That's correct.
These will be posted on the website, too.
But you post it by like 5 to, you know.
No, the names are in there.
By law, we have to indicate the names.
Right, everything is in there. Yep.
That might take a while, so if you wouldn't mind, I wanted the information tonight.
All right, that's fine, not a problem. Travis made a motion to approve the reduction of 7 positions as outlined by the superintendent. Maggie Bishop seconded the motion. Those voting in favor were Bob Hall, Maggie Bishop, Travis Thompson, Helen Joyce, and Melissa Litchfield. Those opposed were Deb Hobson, Kim Meyer, and Paul Bauer. Okay, does that answer it for you? Okay, thank you. All right. All right, then. We now will move to superintendent's report. Dr. Ryan?
I shall be brief. You have the SAU 16 board report that I've provided for you. Is this on? Yes, it is. There's been a short turnaround between our last meeting and this meeting, but we still have 3 or 4 pages worth of information for you. The one highlight I wanted to provide for you this evening is the 10-year enrollment study that New Hampshire School Administrators Association provided for us. It looks at projections and provides a demographic analysis over the next 10 years for CMS and the high school. What I was hoping we were going to be able to do is double dip and see actual grade level enrollments by sending school as well. They did not indicate that. They do indicate grade level enrollments, K through 5, prior to coming to middle school and high school, but they do it in the aggregate, so it's not broken down by Swayze, KES, EKES, and so forth. So that's something that we'll have to perhaps do on our own, which we think we can. Recommendation from Mr. Bauer was to have these have this report reviewed by a gentleman in town, and his name again, I'm sorry.
Peter Francis.
Peter
Thank you. He's a
Francis.
demographics expert. I did connect with Mr. Dean today, who's the Exeter Town Manager, who gave me the contact information for Mr. Francis, and I'll be contacting him tomorrow just to validate and confirm, because I know that some of the information that was relayed through the CMS project and the work that had been done to determine enrollment over the next 10 years for that project may vary based on this report as well, or differ from this report, and we want to ensure that the data we have is good data. I believe it is based on the methods, and it could just come down to the methods. What this report provides is an overall picture of a decrease in enrollment over the next 10 years at the middle school and the high school. It is an opportunity, as I spoke with our principals, to begin to market more of what we're doing in our schools to encourage younger families to come to the area and participate more in the school districts. That's something Mr. Francis is high on. He understands the need to bring more young families to the state. He sees that we're aging. We're, I believe, based on what I read about him today, the 3rd oldest state in the nation, and that means families are leaving us. And we want to attract families to SAU 16. I think this report is something that indicates that very need, and I think we'll be working with it moving forward, certainly again after confirming the data, as part of our strategic plan and how we as an SAU are going to begin marketing our programs more to young families that are seeking to come to the state.
Thank you so much. Any questions for Dr. Ryan?
So are we waiting we're not going to hear any of the information until you have it confirmed, is that correct?
So the information I've made available to you in the packet last week. It was submitted to you, and so it's now a public document. It'll also be posted on our website.
It was
It was online. It was so large that they didn't print it out.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. You want my printed copy, Melissa? I'm happy. Don't spill Diet Coke on it, please.
That's an inside joke. All right. There we go. All right. Thank you. Any other questions for Dr. Ryan? Thank you. We'll move to our principals report. Mr. Monahan, I know you have something for us this evening for a vote as well as other information, perhaps?
Yes, I've got a proposal for a trip. I've asked Mr. Batty to come here and speak to it a little bit. I got some information for you. It's a trip to France.
Right.
Is it for board members or?
Yeah,
Need a chaperone.
come along. It's in April, and it involves a homestay. This trip has been run in the past for us, and we've had other homestays in the world language department. It's an extremely valuable experience for the students staying with obviously native speakers in France and being immersed in the language. It's a much more rich experience, I think. I'm very supportive of it. And because of that, the cost is such, it's very, very attainable. I mean, if you look at what that is for 10 days in France, it's quite a dollar value. So I'd ask Monsieur Batty to speak to it a little bit.
Bonsoir tout le monde. I'll speak English.
Thank you. I love hearing it, though. It's great.
Just a real quick history on this exchange program. We've always been envious of the Japanese department. They have been receiving students from Japan in March every year since I can remember. And when I was contacted in 2014 from a woman who is an English teacher at a K-9 school outside of Paris looking for host families for her students, I was eager to jump at the opportunity. So they started to come and stay with us starting in 2014. They come at the end of October for 2 weeks, first to New York and then here at Exeter High School. We had about 20 students this past October stay with us, and another 6 or so stay at Portsmouth High School. And they've been asking us for a long time to return the favor, and they wanted to host us. We had actually a program previous to this exchange. Mrs. Reardon, who's retired, and Mrs. Goldberg would take students to southern France. They had a company that would find the families for them, and in this particular case, we had families that were eager to host us, so we needed to find a company that would allow us to customize the trip, find our own families, and then just handle more of the logistics of the flights and the transportation and various activities. And we were able to find that company back in 2016. So we did this trip in 2017 during April vacation. We had 14 students with us. They stayed with host families, and it was a really great experience for the kids. One of the benefits of this particular trip is that the students in France were doing state testing during the stay. So our students were not able to stay in the school with them during that time, which gave Madame Goldberg and I a chance to bring the students into the city and to show them the sites. This year she'll also be chaperoning with me. Madame Orliac is our new French teacher at the high school. She's also chaperoning with us. They both grew up in Paris. I've been to Paris 10 times, so we know the city really well, and we can give them a really great tour of the city at a much reduced cost of what it would cost to hire a company to do this for us. I believe we researched a trip through EF Tours, and it was over $4,000. So
Wow.
This particular trip is only $2,100 and change for our students. We have 24 students that have signed up to go. Super excited. We had a parent meeting last month and went over the information with all the parents and answered all their questions. So we're very excited to be able to offer this opportunity to our students.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Go ahead.
Yes, Travis.
the standing
It's the standard question. I know it's
Ask
coming.
every time. It sounds like an amazing trip. I certainly am fully supportive. The question we ask every time this comes up is, are there mechanisms in place to help students who can't afford this type of opportunity, fundraising activities or things of that nature, to make sure it's open to everybody?
Yes, I believe that policy has been put into effect in our school over the last year or two. We talked about this with the students who were interested in signing up for the trip as to whether or not they would like to engage in kind of a collective fundraising opportunity. Because the usual ones that you do, which are bake sales and fundraisers and things like that, usually raise $300 or $400. But a trip of this cost, it's not really feasible to break that up amongst 20 or so students. And to be honest with you, when I talked to the parents about it, no one seemed to be interested in pursuing any specific lines of fundraising. So it doesn't appear to be at this particular time that anyone is in need of that. But we always do discuss that with our parents and our students as an option for them to find ways to fund it. We have 24 students that are signed up to go, so I think most of them are paying for it themselves.
The only question it's amazing, and the kids are going to have you all will have a wonderful time, I'm sure. My only question is relative to safety issues. Given the worldwide political climate right now, will you be periodically checking in with the State Department on travel safety for these youngsters to go there, and for yourselves as well, of course?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, great.
The company that we use is out of Massachusetts. It's called Teach by Travel, and they are also monitoring situations that may be arising in Europe and across the world in terms of safety. We do keep in touch with them, and they are monitoring the situation. We do have a refund policy if anything major were to occur in France or in Europe, and the parents did not feel safe pursuing this trip to get the students their money refunded.
That's good to know. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Just quickly,
Kim?
how were the families found? Like, how do you identify the families?
So the woman who contacted me back in 2014, who was my liaison to the school that we go to, she's an English teacher there, and she finds the families for us, just as we do for them when they come here.
Okay, thanks.
So she knows them, she speaks with them frequently, and makes sure that they're good families.
Thank you. Other questions?
I just have a comment.
Yes.
I definitely supported it. Sounds wonderful. I do wish that somehow we, as a group collectively, could come up with some type of a scholarship fund or fundraising that is in place, because I worry that someone's not going to be the one family to speak up and say, well, we need the money, or certain kids just rule it out because they think, well, we might not be able to afford to do it. So I just wish that at some point we as a group could just figure something out along those lines.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay. Other questions? I'll entertain a motion to approve this trip.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Bob? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? You are good to go. Au revoir.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay.
De rien.
Thank you. Other items, Mike, for us tonight?
No.
No? Okay, thank you. I know it's a short time between our board meetings, and we were on vacation, so that you likely may not have as much to report out. Maybe next month we will have more. That's fine. Thank you so much. Patty?
I can share, since the last time we met, grade 7 Kids Who Care had an incredibly, and once again, their holiday fundraiser, and it's also their auction, actually, I should say, holiday auction and feast. They've raised over $3,400, which they then donate to Buxton Oil, and that in turn helps families in our SAU 16 community in need heat their homes. And I think I recall last year I read a letter from one of the recipients of that. So they're just beyond thrilled at how exciting, and I'll have all the details for the next report. And then I just wanted to speak to our social worker, Morgan Quealy, who organized pretty much single-handedly with then the tremendous help of our school counselors, our holiday gift drive, where that is then sent out to our CMS families, where our staff and our families, we pretty much adopt a family and we buy gifts for their holiday so that all of our families can have a pleasant holiday. And then Morgan organized and our counselors how the families receive those gifts. And it's all done in a hallway, and it was really quite successful, the number of families we were able to help. So that was pretty much our December.
Thank you, Patty. Any questions for Mrs. Wands?
Can I add something?
Of course.
In regard to
Absolutely.
Morgan, I know her as Morgan Sini.
Yes, she was
knew
just
her.
married a few months ago.
Yeah, she, with her assistance, certainly with Ms. Wands, Big Brothers Big
Yeah.
Sisters in Stratham and Exeter Hospital, we have, I think, 3 or maybe 4 students right now from the middle school who travel over once or twice a month to Exeter Hospital and have Big Brothers and Big Sisters, working in a clinical environment, understanding the role of medical practitioners in the hospital, and really getting that mentoring and modeling. And a lot of that is due to what the work that Morgan's doing at CMS.
Yeah, and
Kudos to you on that.
Yeah, I'm really thrilled, and the success is really credit to Morgan, starting last year with reaching out to counselors at our 5 elementary schools, 5th graders. So we're building the program. So this year it's 6th graders. We might have a few in 7th grade, but then when we look at next year, now we'll have 6th, 7th, and a couple of 8th grade, and really build our partnership with Big Brother, Big Sisters. So we're really proud of that. Yeah, appreciate Morgan's work.
Thank you. Very good. All right. Any other questions for Mrs. Wands? Sharon, you're on for SST.
Okay. Well, first of all, Matt Lobdell, one of our automotive instructors, is down in New Jersey for 2 weeks of training for the Volvo. And I really would like to thank Dan Enzing from Exeter Volvo, who is paying for all of the special tools that we will need for working on the pre-production vehicle. So really excited to have Matt come back and share everything that he's learned. I know the kids are really excited about the new opportunity in working with such an amazing vehicle. Today, we had Munters from Amesbury, Mass. come up. Our school counselor, Sharon Spooner, had reached out to them and had been working with them. And they had interviewed and met with some of our kids last week. And they were so impressed with their skills that they came out to come through our welding program today. And she brought with her one of the men, one of the foremen and managers in the shop. And he was so impressed with everything that he saw with Jonathan Burge and what the kids were doing, that one of the kids they had interviewed and they wanted to offer a machinist job, mechanical assembler. My brother's a machinist. They decided instead they wanted to offer him a welding job, and he will start at $18.29 plus a 15% shift premium.
Yep.
Once he turns 18. And they had interviewed some other kids, and they're just really excited about what we do. And I think this is going to be a continuous partnership that we have going on. So really excited. And I will say Sharon Spooner has been working really hard on developing that relationship, also with another relationship with Seacoast United to really expand our work-based learning opportunities for our kids. And last week, I got to be a judge on Cutthroat Cupcake. And so I have to, believe it or not, my favorites were the garbanzo bean cupcakes. And I know that Esther Asbell and Chris Andriski are going to be judges as well coming up in the next couple of weeks. And Mr. Monahan and I both have a student at Exeter High School and at SST who has been so passionate about her biomedical class that she did a lot of research on her own, and she believes that she's found a way to change strawberries to blue. So she wanted to pay for it all herself for $1,200, but she can't order it personally. She would have to come through the school. So we're working with Adam Krause to make this a ELO learning opportunity, and looking at some of my budget line items so that, you know, we're not tasking this girl with $1,200, but it's like absolutely so exciting, and I just can't wait. And Dr. Ryan thinks that we should call them Blue Hawk strawberries.
Yes.
Ooh, that's a great idea.
Blue Hawkberries.
I like that. Great.
I think she probably gets naming rights, but I'm sure that she would be happy to meet with you and discuss that.
Thank you, Sharon. Are there any questions for Ms. Wilson?
That's great.
I think I speak for the board when I say we'd like to see that
And sample them.
I know. I already said I want to have Dr. Ryan in. We'll invite Mr. Monahan over. Maybe we can, have her bring to the board. Yeah, absolutely. Of course, CMS. Oh, and actually, we're going to be training some of Patty's kids to do compression-only CPR. We were chosen as one of the health occupation classes as a partner with Dartmouth and with American Health Association, I believe, and they're going to supply us some of the equipment, and our kids will go over, and we'll train the middle schoolers. Yeah, we were just talking about it tonight, so very excited about that as well.
Thank you. Any other questions for Sharon? Thank you so much, all three. Great job. Appreciate it. All right, our next agenda item is to review the budget hearing recommendation for deliberative session. At this point in time, we will take each of the warrant articles individually. I will read the first warrant article in full, and then I will entertain any motions relative to that warrant article. So in your packet, you should have this 2-page sheet. Okay. Article 1. Shall the district raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant, or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $63,919,213. Should this article be defeated, the operating budget shall be $63,742,468, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the district or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, 10, and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. The School Board and Budget Advisory Committee both recommend $63,919,213 as set forth on said budget. I will entertain a motion on this article. Bob?
Yes, I move for reconsideration on the budget amount.
All right, and could you be specific in terms of the amount on that, please?
After hearing what we've heard tonight, I think we need to open consideration for certainly the GBEX issue.
So you're talking $140,000, okay? Do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, Travis, second. Thank you. We'll open this for discussion.
So we're adjusting it just for 140? That's
Just
it?
right now, unless somebody else is going to make.
Right. Right now, the motion is for $140,000 addition to put the GBEX money back in the budget.
Okay, we're not adjusting anything else?
Not at this point, no.
All right, I just want to understand that.
Okay.
Can I ask a question just to understand the
Certainly.
process here?
Sure.
So if I have a point of discussion that relates to the funding of the budget, but not specifically to the GBEX piece.
All right.
Would that be relevant to bring up now, or do we just want to keep this focused on 140 for GBEX?
I would stay on this motion.
Stay on this, and then you can add an additional motion later if you wish.
Sure.
Okay.
And does there need to be a motion on the floor in order for there to be discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Is there any discussion on this? Bob, did you want to address it since you made the motion?
Well, I just, in hearing both the students and the staff, and I think what I said before, communications is a big issue that we have not had. This board has not, it's not been clear to the GBEX and back to us as to their attempts, and I agree that there's more funding that they need to address. But I think that we've got people here. There's certainly a sign of willingness to work in the future. I certainly do not want to end a school for any student in this district. I think that clearly they are meeting the needs of students in that facility, and I certainly want to both keep it and fund it. And that's why I moved that we restore the $140,000.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Paul?
I agree with a lot of what Bob said to an extent. Certainly, I agree that GBEX is providing an important need for students, both within and outside of our district. There's no question about that. In terms of the funding that's provided to the school, what I believe I heard Mr. Stackhouse say this evening was, while a $140,000 reduction would be, I think, about a 9% impact on their budget, it would not require the school to cease operations next year. I think we were pretty uniform in our belief that something has to change with regards to the way that GBEX is funded. We're not looking to end the school. I don't think anyone on the board wants that to happen.
No.
But we also don't want to be, the sole funder of the school either. So, for that reason, I'm not inclined to add in the $140,000 for this year, but certainly am open to reconsidering for further down the road, for what remains for GBEX, if that's something that we want to leave in place going forward to complement funding that comes from other areas going forward. So that's what my thinking is on it now.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Other comments? Travis, yes.
So I see both sides of that equation. Again, not to keep reiterating the same thoughts, I think none of us want to see the program be negatively impacted. My perspective, it serves a very unique role within all of this, for all of the students that it serves, but for our purposes, for the 65 cooperative students that attend GBEX. I think it's unfortunate that it took us getting to this point, maybe to bring the conversations to light, and I'll speak for myself. I'll take my fair share of blame for that too, as well, Mr. Stackhouse. It's maybe we finally come to a point where we can have open, honest conversations about the fiscal realities of GBEX and work together to try to resolve them. As I stated at our last meeting, I was prepared to give it a year at 140 and then see where we're at, but I don't want to negatively impact those 65 students. I think the message has been received that there are significant concerns by this board relative to the fiscal stability of GBEX. I also understand some of the concerns of some of our constituents in Brentwood that had been brought to our attention at our last meeting. But I'm prepared, I think, at this point to give it a year to put the 140 back in with some stipulations that we work together, have much better communication, whether it's at these formal board meetings or at the administrative level, both of which I think is appropriate, and work together to put the school on a solid financial footing so that we can reduce the district's obligation without negatively impacting the students that we send there. So I think that's where I'm at this point, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. I'd like to echo much of what Travis and Bob has said, and I also respect Paul's opinion on this too, because I feel that there definitely have been some communications issues here. I think that tonight we learned information that perhaps we were not privy to before, and that I'm glad that you folks came out and spoke to many of those things. I hear the students, you are amazing. You're very eloquent, and your presentation tonight certainly had an impact on us. Having said all of that, I still feel I'm inclined to agree with Travis and with Bob to restore the $140,000 with certain caveats that if we're still at this point next year where there has not been some better communication, whether you want to call it communication or more efforts, I heard about the boosters, I think that's wonderful, to try to alleviate some of the cost, then we may be back to where we are. And I think this opened conversation. It clearly did. It did send a message, and we also have been educated as well tonight. So that's where I'm coming from at this point in time. Any other comments at all?
I have
Melissa,
please.
Yes.
I don't want to see the school shut its doors. I do believe it provides a service to these students. My issue is where the money comes from, and it's always my issue. I don't feel that the responsibility falls on the taxpayers of SAU 16. One thing that I often go back to is Arthur sitting in the front row of our deliberative session. This was a year or two back, and he stood up and he said, it might have even been the public hearing, he said, you know what, I really don't have the money for the additional taxes for the CMS renovation, but if you really need it, I'll find a way. And I always think about him and other people in his place. Why are they funding this? That's my question. I went back through my own paperwork, and I have a lengthy report from Mr. Stackhouse from when he was invited to come before the board back in 2018. This is lengthy, okay? We have heard so many emotional pleas tonight, which with any change, there are going to be emotional pleas. We have heard that we're cutting their funding in half. We're not cutting their funding in half. And I want to point out that they receive approximately $7,000 per student from the state. That's money that, by the way, is being taken away from SAU 16 without the students here, but they are receiving money per student, number one. The other thing that we've mentioned is that we do provide 280 there, but it does bother me. We're cutting a reading program. Okay, I told you they receive the money per pupil. We do cover the maintenance of $140K. The other thing that came up many times when we were talking about the CMS renovation at the renovation meetings, we were all genuinely stressed because we said, you know what, we're going to have to go back to the taxpayers in a couple of years because we're going to have to put millions into renovations for the XAU, for the tech building, which is what houses GBACs. They pay $50,000 a year for that. We cover all the expenses, electricity and such. We cover all of the maintenance. SST has already been renovated, so that's not what needs to be renovated. So again, we're covering more for GBACs. The other thing that I continue to hear is that these students want a smaller class size. I appreciate that, I really do, and I agree with them. I would rather see smaller class sizes too. Why do you live in a regional district? That's one concern. You know, moving into it, when we initially moved here, we moved because we were excited about the size of the schools. So I just want to say that these are factors to consider, and my biggest concern is I don't want to see anything happen to the school, but we have been discussing this for years, and the burden needs to fall in the correct place, not on the taxpayers of SAU 16. It's not right.
Thank you, Melissa. Other comments or questions? Yes, Kim?
So I tend to agree with you, Melissa, and I think your points are really well taken. My struggle and frustration has been with process, and I think that will be the theme you hear, at least from me tonight, is the process that we put in place. It's quite apparent that trustees were surprised that this was being cut from the budget, as well as families and parents. And I'm not saying it's Mr. Stackhouse's fault or our fault, but there's not a process here that's been open. And that's troubling to me, especially in a large organization. So I absolutely agree with you. It troubles me that this has been the budget for so long. It troubles me that we've had conversations, but we need to have a process in place that moves us in the right direction for these children. I completely support, and I'm troubled by the statement that members have negatively portrayed the education at GBEX. I mean, I myself have 4 kids, one of whom did leave Exeter High School and go elsewhere, so I understand the need when an education or a facility or a place isn't the right fit for a child. And I've seen my daughter thrive because she was there. I've seen my 3 other children thrive here. So they're all different. They all require something unique. And I didn't hear that from any one of the members. I mean, we really, I know that's been reiterated, but that troubles me to hear that because it's just absolutely not the case. The problem is where the burden falls. But I don't feel it's right, especially given the history where Skip Hansen in this district helped create the charter school. I think there were signs that in 2011, Mr. Morgan severed the employer relation piece. So I think there were signs that we needed to have a conversation, but I'd like to see that process happen. So for me, I agree with adding the 140 back for this year with stipulation and discussion and processes in place. And I also ran a nonprofit, so I understand how hard it is to get funding. I understand, especially in this state, there's 8,000 nonprofits. It's a lot of people looking for a lot of money, but it's something that we have to face. We have to face. I mean, when I look at revenue streams running a nonprofit, I think, okay, what's in my control and what isn't? And for a long time, we've known that the SAU funding is not clearly in the control of GBEX, right? So we've got to figure out a solution together, and I think we all want to do it together. We're not saying, hey, go figure it out. We understand these are all our children. We need to serve the community, but we need a process in place that assures the burden's in the right place and the ownership is appropriate. So thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Any other comments? The motion on the floor is to restore $140,000 for GBEX funding for the 2021 school year. All in favor, please raise your hand. 5 in favor, all opposed. 3 opposed. Abstentions. The motion carries. Thank you. Any further motions or discussions relative to the budget? Paul?
It's my understanding to have discussion, there needs to be a motion on the table first, correct?
That's
So you would
correct.
make an additional motion?
You would make an
consideration.
additional
Okay.
motion, right.
To open discussion on it, I'd like to make a motion for your consideration to add $240,000 back into the budget for the purpose of keeping the 2 reading teachers at CMS.
Second.
Thank you. All right. Would you like to
If I could.
address that?
There's
sir?
2 teachers, Bob?
2 teachers, 2
Two,
reading?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the way I came up with that figure was because Molly had indicated it would be $360,000 for the 3, so that's where I came with that figure
Okay.
from. So, like I said, I'm making that motion primarily because I feel the need to have further discussion on this. And the question I have, and I don't know, Dr. Ryan, if it's best directed to you or best directed to Principal Wands, but Ms. Pryor had presented this potential to have 2 of the teachers remain at the middle school and have the reading program stay in place next year, but done in a different way. And I guess what I want to find out, because it's the first time I'm hearing about this as a possibility, I want to find out from you or from Ms. Wands or both, is that a viable alternative in your view? Is that something that could be workable?
I'm going to actually defer to Ms. Wands because she works with it on a daily basis.
Understood.
Thank you.
Sure. So to add, to keep the two reading teachers, that's what I heard. I just want to repeat that so I
Right.
heard that correctly.
Yep.
Yes, I mean, certainly we could. We could actually, if we had 2 reading teachers, 2 additional ones. It's all about programming. So my mind would be going, then we're going to add to programming. And I don't see how, looking at the number of sections that Bill Perkins and I have been looking at and the off-team classes, to add it there. You don't want to have, I guess, more staff than you have children to put them into. Because when you add an extra period in the day for the intervention and enrichment, that's currently, the way it's done right now, it's kind of modeled really after a junior high, I would say, whereas a computer class, like it's a quarter system, and every quarter, the students in, I'm going to speak to 7th and 8th grade, have another type of elective course, whether one term it's family and consumer science, one term it's computers, one term it's tech ed, STEM class, so that each quarter there's a place for, or as Bill Perkins would say, a filler. You know, there's a place where a student goes. And so that's going back to the drawing board of, okay, what is that going to look like with the sections and the number of students in a section? Now, if we speak to programming, if you're suggesting we would like to add something else. Like, for example, a lot of middle schools have what's called, I'm just going to use the term, a success lab or an academic skills center, which is run parallel to a reading intervention. Many of our students in the middle school, whether they're identified or not, struggle with executive function skills. So your executive function skills are your planning, your prioritizing, your self-regulation, and it's actually quite successful in many middle schools that have these type of labs or centers where maybe a student would go there rather than a world language class because perhaps they're not just quite ready yet for that academic, with the academic expectations of a world language class, also getting a credit for the high school. So my mind is kind of going there, like, okay, we could probably look at, something like that. But I mean, you're putting me on the spot.
Right. No, and I wanted.
My mind is going. I'm a good. I have lots of ideas up there. And it's all about kids and what we can offer kids and helping there.
May I offer a lifeline?
Sure,
Patty?
offer a lifeline.
I think I speak Patty, so let me see if I can translate. I think perhaps what Ms. Wands is saying is that there's a way that we'd be able to utilize those two positions. It just wouldn't look like it does today.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes
So there would be very much
Sorry, I
an
was giving too much
opportunity
detail,
to
maybe.
change the way they're delivering services or delivering reading instruction, but
To
it just
support
would
kids.
not look like it looks today. So it wouldn't be an expectation that the schedule be the exact same as it is today, because that would require replacing all of the teachers in order
Right.
to stay within 8-period day and such.
Right.
So the answer is yes, but it will look different.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, if people want to roll their sleeves up with me and work with me to provide the best for kids, I'm happy to do that.
Ms. Wands, I did mean to say, even before I asked that question, I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's- I
with what at least for me, is a brand new idea to put you on the spot and say, how's that going to work? I know that's.
Yeah, I want to help people keep their jobs
Talented.
too. I mean, nobody sitting at this table wants that for anybody, but then how can we in turn help kids?
Right, and let me be clear about kind of where I'm coming from with this, because it's not just about saving jobs. And nobody on the board, or certainly Ms. Wands or Superintendent Ryan, is surprised this up. It's something that we've talked about in the
Yeah.
last couple of meetings.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time with this, not because I'm in any way opposed to the transition of, no longer having a specific reading course for 6th grade and having the reading instruction included in ELA and in the other subjects. I'm not opposed to that at all.
Yep.
What concerns me is, again, as Ms. Meyer had said, the process of how we've gotten here, and that we set up a pilot for this year. We really don't have data back from that pilot yet, understandably, because we're not even, we're like halfway through an academic year. So I understand why we don't.
It's coming, yeah.
But, we don't have that information back yet. And my concern is that it feels to me, at least, like this transition, which I believe will be a great transition for the middle school, it feels like it's being rushed for budgetary reasons, to me.
Okay.
And that concerns me greatly, because I think in order to have this work optimally, programmatically, we need to give it an opportunity to get set up so that, all of the, we have buy-in from all of the participants here. And when we set up this whole program to succeed, and we set up our teachers to succeed at the transition, the kids are going to succeed. So it's not that I am allergic to the transition to change at all. It's just that I feel like it's being pushed quickly. And I'm looking for kind of a way to bridge that transition. And that's where I'm coming from with this motion and the concerns that I'm raising. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear to everybody.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Bob?
I'd just like to make a comment. My concern is the teacher cuts versus the schedule. It seems like we had an offer for teachers to retire early, and 14 teachers stood up and said, I'm ready to go. And so we said, yeah, there's 14 teachers leaving the district. That's a lot of senior staff we're losing. Real, well-interred Exeter people for many years. And all of a sudden, we have additional cuts we needed. And we really didn't know that. I mean, we thought we were going to cover all the classes that needed and all the changes with those 14 retirements, but that wasn't to be. There had to be more. So my problem is, and then we had this, all of a sudden, the change in schedule at the middle school showed up. It was like, where did that come from? And that was my problem with this. And I just think that I agree with the process. We're lacking the knowledge, the foresight, the follow-through. And why didn't it come to the curriculum committee? Why did the change in curriculum not come before us in the curriculum committee on the board? I just, and I'm all for this, but I want it done the right way. And I don't think it was done this year. So let's make it better for next year.
Any other comments? Dave? Yes.
So what Paula spoke about bringing back the 2 reading positions, which were cut. They were cut because we were changing the schedule. I missed the last.
Right.
Confusion.
Right.
So I just wasn't informed. So Paul's motion is to add the 2.
Restore 2 positions.
Okay. That's what his thing is, so add the 240 back in.
Right. And as Superintendent Ryan said, it's not going to be the same way it is now. They'd be integrated in a different way to continue a reading program, but not in the same schedule that we have now. The schedule change that they're envisioning for the middle school could still occur with this taking place.
That's correct.
Yeah.
All right, so the schedule already is in effect changed.
And it's not necessarily the logistics schedule.
That's why we're asking for the 2, that's why we felt, okay, we can eliminate 2 reading positions because the schedule's already changed.
Right. So it's not so much the logistics of the school day as it is the delivery of services and what we believe students need in terms of enrichment and intervention. That constitutes changing the amount of minutes students are in class and the number of class periods. So we'd still like to move forward with that, but adding these 2 positions back in also guarantees that those 2 reading, I'm going to call them reading positions or reading program, will continue to be delivered. It'll just be delivered, it'll look differently. Agenda proposed something off team. I leave that to the middle school staff who really know that schedule inside and out, teachers and administration included, to figure out how best to utilize those 2 positions.
Right. Okay. And it would continue the reading program and also give more time to get the data that's coming from the pilot that's been in place, so that we have more data behind the transition that's envisioned and I believe still will occur at the middle school.
But would they be classroom teachers, or are they performing intervention?
Folks, could we go through the chair, please? Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, Kim?
Can you clarify? What I'm hearing is that those 2 positions will be used for reading in a most likely different capacity, since we just threw it at you a minute ago. We don't know precisely. But I'm hearing that there would still be the 7-period day shift, 6-day-a-week schedule, and you'd still be launching intervention and enrichment for the entire 6th grade. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Well, it would really be the entire school. It would be 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, because the 7-period schedule would
entire school
impact the entire school. And we would be using this year to work on that planning and working together as a school community.
We'd be using
development.
This year as in now, as in January.
Well, we'd have to wait till after the vote passes, my understanding.
Well, assuming we move in that direction, we'd be using, you're talking about, you'd be starting now from January to?
Yep. We could use department meeting time, staff meeting time.
Hey,
So-
may I ask a question?
Yes, certainly.
Relative to this, just for some helpful clarification,
Yeah,
is all. And
that'd be
so,
great.
Ms. Wands, if moving forward status quo in September, would we be able to make any of the reductions that we've proposed in this budget? Or would we have to restore all of the positions that we reduced to satisfy the needs of that 8-period day?
Yes, so if we go back to an 8-period day, how it currently is, then all of the positions would go back in, and my sense is the budget would increase significantly than what was
Absolutely.
proposed.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
Okay, look, I hear from some other folks. Deb?
Can you
yes?
define all the other positions? What does that mean?
I think Molly.
Foreign language.
On the.
There was
It was presented in the public hearing, yes. Those
Right.
Slide in your slide deck.
the 7 positions.
3 reading, 1 computer, 1 music, 1 language, 1 art.
So I follow up, does that indicate that we're not able to cut the 2, or add the 2 back in without the others?
That's not what
No?
we said.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I misunderstood.
Melissa, you had something earlier, and then Paul? Did you have something you wanted to add?
I do, but as part of it now, the 7 positions, they're not full-time positions, are they? Are we looking at adding back $1 million? For 7 positions plus the additional 2? I just want to make sure, are these part-time positions?
So
What
the
are they?
motion that's on the floor is to restore 2 positions.
But it's a domino effect.
To not move forward with rescheduling to a 7-period day and adding the hawk block.
Okay.
We would have to then add the balance of the positions that have been reduced. So it would be a total of 7 we'd be restoring, including 4 of which were through attrition and retirement. So the only positions that we're looking to restore are 2 reading positions. That's the motion on the table.
And if the curriculum committee felt strongly about it continuing to be an 8-period day, would that happen?
That's a conversation I think that we should have, because at that point, I think we're getting into the weeds of the operation of the school day. And I'm not certain that the board has that within its authority to make those changes. So we would have a thorough conversation around that.
Okay, so I just want to throw out there to everyone, I think it's more of a plea in a good way. I understand where you're coming from with the reading program, and if we were going to continue with the schedule as it currently is, I could see myself supporting it. My concern is right now, I feel like they're going to be in an intervention position, and I don't feel as though they're going to be classroom teachers, which I think is what they would like to see. And my other concern is we did just add $140K back when we already have an excellent middle and high school option. And I just want to point out that all of the towns elected all of us, so please, let's please be aware of the money that we're going to be putting forth at the deliberative session. I know I'm just looking at Brentwood right now, but we're looking at, without having added in that $140K, $1.53 per thousand raise in taxes. We were all voted in by the Brentwood residents. My concern is that without that $140K, we're already pushing 6%. So please just keep in mind that everything we add back is going to be a percentage higher that we have to raise and appropriate and present to the public. That's all.
Thank you. Paul?
I simply just want to clarify what my motion is, because I sense there's a bit of confusion, and so I want everyone to be clear on it. My motion is to add in the $240,000 specifically to retain those 2 reading positions, so that our reading program, in some semblance, different than it currently is, but in some semblance would continue at the middle school for next year while we continue to obtain the data to support the transition that we're looking at. My motion is not to change the schedule, to change scheduling to attain an 8-period day. My motion does not have to do with the other positions. Correct. It's just with those 2 positions, the 240. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear in everybody's mind.
Thank you.
I have not spoken to this, but I would like to address some of the things that you've. I agree, first of all, with everything that was said relative to process. I totally understand that. I feel that the pilot program data, which has not been presented to the board yet, has been is something that we should have had before any decisions were made relative to this. What you said earlier, Bob, about the fact that we had no inkling about the change, and that's within the purview of the administration to make changes, at the middle school. But I think out of a courtesy to this board, we should have been informed of many of these potential changes before it hit the budget, and we weren't. We have a curriculum committee that meets every month, and I'm disturbed by that. I will tell you. Having said all of that, however, I'm also looking at the additional funding as being an issue for me personally in terms of a bottom line, and I'm hearing what Melissa is saying, and I made this comment in the last meeting. We have a responsibility to the taxpayers. I voted in favor of the $140,000 for GBEX because I feel strongly that there were some communications issues there. I feel that still they this needs to be worked out for the following year, or perhaps that money will be cut next year. But I cannot in good conscience, when you look at some of the folks who have been coming to various board members concerned about their homes and their taxes. The taxes, the reassessment in all of the towns this year really pushed those taxes up. And I realize I represent Stratham, and I know there have been comments made that Stratham would likely pass this, but I also represent 5 other towns. That's what a co-op is. You represent 6 towns. You hold a seat from the town that you are living in. But I do feel that to add this $240,000 would endanger the budget being passed in March. It may not pass no matter what, and then we're back to the default budget, which we're looking at $176,000 that would have to be found elsewhere in the budget. So even though I agree with everything that was said relative to process, I can't support, sadly, adding this amount of money back in terms of that bottom line figure. Are there any other comments or questions? All right, we'll vote on the motion. The motion is to add an additional $240,000 for 2 reading teachers to the amended budget. All in favor, please signify. Well, why don't we do a hand raise? All in favor, please raise your hands.
Oh, no.
1, 2, 3, 4. All opposed? Okay, we have a tie, so the motion does not carry. The motion does not carry because there were not 5 votes. Okay. All right, then. Are there any additional motions to this article? Changes or reconsideration? So at this point in time, then, I don't believe we need to take any additional vote on that. The vote was taken to add $140,000. Am I correct on that, Dr. Ryan?
That's correct. So the reconsideration dollars get added into the new figure, which the business administrator, Director of Finance and Operations will have for us lickety-split.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion on Article 1? All right, we will move to Article 2.
Helen,
Yes.
Can I just want to add, I mean, we've already said it, but if we are moving to the 7-period day, which is not our prerogative. I'm not trying to make it our prerogative as a board member, but I do feel, like Helen said, disappointed that this wasn't unveiled and discussed in curriculum. While it's not our decision, it's yours. You're the expert. That's what we've hired you for. My job, as I see it, is a parallel track, right? You're in charge of program. We're trying to give you the resources you need for program, and then you hope they meet in a beautiful marriage at the top. And I feel like we didn't get there. Like, it's really hard to defend a budget and defend program changes and be an advocate, not defend, be an advocate. And when you don't understand where the program changes are coming from. And that's not for us to sanction or bless, but it's just to have an understanding as someone who's going to be looking at making really important cuts and changes. I feel like we didn't have the information, that the process was flawed. And I would ask that we look at the curriculum and philosophy agenda. And I would like to understand, I have real concerns about the timing to implement an intervention and enrichment period successfully. I know it can be amazing. It can be such a great, important part of the multi-tiered system of support, but I really want to understand how we're moving forward and if we've given you the resources to do that. You know, are there funds in terms of professional development set aside for this? Is it enough? Is it what we need to get the job done? And so I'd like to look at, talking to you about shifting the curriculum and philosophy agenda, if we could, to add some of these things.
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
And to echo one other point relative to that is that there have been in the past, not necessarily with this administration, but changes that were made, significant changes that were made that the board was blindsided on, and we had to deal with some serious issues a few years back because we were not informed that a major change was coming with regard to whether it be alt ed, whether it be changes to the high school assessment program. We knew nothing of this. And for me as chair to receive an email, several emails from parents who were upset and wanting to understand why, it's more informing us. It's a courtesy to let us know so that we can answer constituents' questions when they come up. And that's all that we're asking for. We're not asking for veto power or anything along those lines. It's just keeping us informed, if you will, and explaining to us. I think that's what everybody around this table is looking for. So having said that, are there any other comments or questions on Article 1? All right, then. Article 2, sale of land. Shall the district authorize the Exeter Region Cooperative School Board to sell on such terms and conditions as the Exeter Regional Cooperative School Board determine are appropriate land identified as 165 Amesbury Road, located in Kensington, comprised of approximately 26.36 acres. Full proceeds from the sale will increase the unassigned fund balance used to offset the tax rate. Sale of property is recommended by the Exeter Region Cooperative School Board. Do we have a motion relative to this? So moved to accept as written. Thank you. A second on that? Thank you, Deb. Is there any discussion relative to this?
May I add a point of reference?
Certainly.
Perhaps in the motion you asked that the word regional be changed to region, so that the
Region.
language of the article correctly reflects the name of the district.
That's a good point. Thank you. Absolutely. All right. No further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. All right. There are no committee reports this evening. Is there any old or new business to come before the board? All righty. Public input. Is there any further public input tonight before we move into non-public session? All right, then. At this point in time, we do need to go into non-public session in accordance with Chapter 91-A:3, 2C. We'll poll the board. A motion. I need a motion. I'm sorry. A motion to go into non-public. Thank you.
So moved.
Bob, second. Deb? Thank you. Poll the board. Dave?
Aye.
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 Thank you. We are now in non-public at 9:15. Thank you for coming this evening.